All right, and welcome back to WVCR 88.3 The Saint. I'm Justin Kenny as always, and with me tonight we have a very special guest, especially for people of my age. Might remember this man for a lot of things from our childhood, especially if you're a big fan of Nickelodeon. Jeff Sutphen. So, Jeff, thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure.
So, why don't you start us off by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. As far as my career goes, I think I was very fortunate when I was growing up. By the time I was kind of late in my high school years, I kind of realized like, oh, wait a minute, I think TV, you can actually do this for a living.
Yeah,
So that was one of those things where when I started looking for colleges, it was, hey, let me find colleges that have communication programs that can help teach me the way to do this. And me and my buddy, my best friends, who are brothers Bill and Steve, we used to run around with camcorders and make home movies all the time. So it was kind of one of those things like all of a sudden the realization of, oh, just running around with, acting like idiots, we could do this professionally and someone would pay us to be idiots. And I
yeah.
was able to really kind of make that happen. I went to Marist College in Poughkeepsie and learned how to, work in television and right out of college. Worked in Manhattan for a bunch of years. Ended up in the Viacom fold, did VH1, MTV before I ended up at Nickelodeon. And from there, I just, kept, I never thought when I started at Nickelodeon, I was like, oh yeah, just another gig. Like I'll be here for a few months and that'll be that. And the more I did it, the longer I stayed, the more projects I got to do, the more I enjoyed that content. And I was still doing other stuff along the way, but I was always kind of drawn back to doing Nickelodeon and kids content and family oriented programming that really connected with me. And then I've been very fortunate that I've been able to continue doing that and when I have my own kids, so I can see them being entertained by stuff that I was doing. So it's all been good, man. It's been a good ride.
Now, of course, I'm 26 right now.
Okay.
And so obviously I grew up in the 2000s, really watching, like I was a Nickelodeon kid. And I have this memory of a certain character from that era who I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, was you. Pick Boy?
That's me. Wait, there it
Oh,
is.
is it
Pick
there?
boy for president. This one right here,
Oh.
right there. I don't know if you could see up here. There's that logo there. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I think what you're asking is how comfortable am I in a full body leotard? Well, Justin, the answer is I'm very comfortable. I had no problem wearing my underwear on the outside. I feel like I can trust you. Normally, I wouldn't tell people this information that I'm a part-time superhero, but I feel like we're friends and your audience is on the same page.
Yeah. Yeah. So how did that character kind of come about? Because I remember like Pick Boy didn't have a show. He was kind of just
No,
a guy who was interviewing people on the orange carpet or doing
sure.
other things like in between shows. What was the total like vision for that character and where did that come from?
As we all know, every superhero has an origin story, except for Pick Boy. No, so Pick Boy started on in 2002. I was hired to be a producer on a show called You Pick Live. So You Pick Live was a live daily show that would go on after Slime Time Live. So Slime Time Live was out of Orlando from 3 to 5 p.m. And then from 5 to 7 out of New York City, we would shoot You Pick Live. It was a 2 hour kid control block. So we'd put stuff on the internet like, hey, which cartoons do you want to see? Kids would vote on, do you want to see Chalk Zone, Rugrats, or SpongeBob? And everyone would vote, and we played it honest, like whoever whatever got voted, we played. Or we would do challenges. Hey, do you want to see us go out in Times Square in the middle of winter, try and sell ice cubes, bathing suits, or fans? So it was all that. And Pick Boy. So we started that show. I was hired as a producer. And then as we were starting to get it ready to go on air, we had, hey, let's give out prizes. So we'll have a prize wall, but how do we determine which kid gets to go to the prize wall? So we created this superhero character called Pick Boy because the hosts of the show, Brent and Candace, couldn't pick a kid because it showed favoritism. And Brent and Candace, as the hosts of the show, also couldn't read prize copy because that was FCC rules and regulations. That was them
Yeah.
endorsing products. So we created Pick Boy, who was just this ancillary background, know nothing character. And I would come out, my goal was I would come out, say I randomly picked this kid. That kid would go over, pick a door. I would pull out the prize and go, congratulations, you won a Schwinn bicycle with dual suspension. That was the genesis of Pick Boy. It was really birthed out of legality. What ended up happening was Pick Boy, the kids really responded to him primarily because they knew, hey, if I buddy up with the superhero, I have a chance of winning a prize. But I really kind of, my goal with it was just to always keep it loose and fun. And I never thought much about it because I was a producer on the show, and that's where my mind was. I had so many duties and responsibilities that. So by the time when I put on the cape and tights, I was so like, I got 14 other things to be worrying about. So I was just like, yeah, hey, what do you want? Okay, great. And I think the writers ended up realizing like, oh, Pick Boy can come in and deliver a punchline. Pick Boy can have, and Brent, the male host, we just, again, like unspokenly, like I would walk on and give him like a snide look like Brent, and he would, Pick Boy. So we kind of started this silly little
Yeah.
rivalry, and it exploded. Pick Boy became this larger than life character. Nickelodeon starts sending me to red carpets, orange carpets, Super Bowls, movie junkets, and it just became this thing. And I managed to take that 15 seconds of fame and stretch it into 15 years. So, but it was, I always joke that, I think on my resume, I write, former game show host, part-time superhero, and full-time dad. And all three of those things are accurate. So as silly as they sound, they are accurate.
It's funny how just some little regulation, like you said, the FCC or legality, can bring on this new character has become kind of beloved by a bunch of people, especially for people my age. Just remember that from all time on Nickelodeon. It's
Yeah,
just
it's
funny
been
to see
really
how.
cool. I think I was, and that was the thing is like, as the character started, like, as it started to grow, I was very self-aware that, not that I was like, oh my gosh, I'm this huge mega star. I never felt that way about it. But I was
Yeah.
also very aware of what you just said, that like this will be like, I grew up watching Sesame Street and Mr. Rogers. Those were things that like I can go look back and go, oh yeah, this and that, and sing the songs from Sesame Street and lessons from Mr. Rogers. Like those were part of my childhood. I was always aware that, hey, I am going to be part. I will be an answer in a drinking game. I will be part of I never thought it would be as big as it was, but I knew I would be a blip on that radar, and I always took that very serious. And it was something that I love. And even nowadays, like I'll be like meeting you and talking to you, just like, oh,
Yeah.
I work with people. I have coworkers who are of your age or nearby, roughly, and they're like, I grew up watching you. You were my childhood, and that makes me feel great and old,
Yeah.
but it makes me feel great.
Well, I mean, it's one of those things. Like they say, the same thing with teachers is that like doing like children's television or stuff like that. Like once you get past a certain time, you're always just gonna feel old. Like when somebody who used to watch you or used to teach comes up to see you after all those years. It just you kind of chose the wrong path if you didn't want to feel old all the time.
Yeah, no, I'm good with it. Like I said, I'm very proud of the time I've spent in the cape and tights. I've had not only some of my best work experiences, but some of my best life experiences, running around as a superhero. And at one point in time, uh, due to the popularity of the character that I created, they launched a Pick Boy in Italy. There was
Oh wow.
one in there was four of them around the world. I think there was one in like in a Latin speaking, an Italian one. I feel like in Scotland maybe. I can't remember. There was ended up being four. They were all Nickelodeon proper, through Nickelodeon, but internationally, which I found really funny that they made characters essentially based on me that were all around the world.
Did they ever try to just like get all the Pick Boys together?
No, you can't do that. That'll open a vortex. That's bad. We can't all be in the same place at once. Plus, evil doers would know how to put a stop to all of us.
Yeah, because it's funny to watch just how, I guess, how much diffusion kind of happens around the world, how many like sitcoms and characters all just go around. Like The Office was a British show before it became an American show, and then
Right.
now there's even like a Saudi Arabian Office. And
Right.
like, and then like Phil Rosenthal even made a whole entire documentary about him trying to make an Everybody Loves Raymond show in Russia. And so it's just always been interesting to see how just one show starts off in one country and then you have like 20 different versions of it around the world.
Yeah, and it shows the success of the characters and the content, and I like I said, I was never felt like, oh, I'm this major star, and it never went to my head. I always took it very seriously, as serious as you could be.
Yeah.
And I took the role seriously. I never took the character serious because the character had to be, I always looked at Pick Boy as a little bit of SpongeBob. It was that kind of that blind optimism. He wasn't, Pick Boy was never smart enough to realize like this isn't going your way. It was, hey, Pick Boy, your house is burning down. He was like, great, time to remodel. It was never nothing was ever a problem. It was always a positive spin on everything.
So one final question on Pick Boy is that do
Sure.
you think we'll ever see a return of Pick Boy?
I would love to. And it's funny because now I have a 14-year-old daughter who, over the years has discovered, wait a minute, you did some. And so, and she loves superheroes too. And she's like, I mean, just the other day, she was telling me, she's like, you should tell Nickelodeon to do. I was like, I would love to. I would love to do like a Pick Boy movie because as I started this whole thing, every superhero has an origin story except Pick Boy. I think I would love to do Pick Boy's origin story as a Nickelodeon movie. Um, we
Make the
have,
internet break.
yeah. I listen. If Here's the reality of today's day and age, there are fans like you. Fans nowadays are the ones who move the needle. I could go to Nickelodeon and go, guys, let's do this, and it's like, come on, and they would go, oh yeah, this is fine, and like we have the idea. Me and the producer of You Pick Live, who's now a big time Nickelodeon director, we have the whole thing mapped out on paper. We put together the treatment, the pitch. So if someone said go, we would make this happen within weeks. So hey, rally the fans, Justin, get them on board, and I'll deliver a Pick Boy movie.
Well, I don't know if I have that much influence, but I would love to
Come
see it
on,
happen.
true fans unite. Here we go. Let's unlock some core memories, huh?
Definitely. And then now I also remember you from a different show at that time, which
Mm-hmm.
was kind of a mental challenge show called Brain Surge.
Yep.
And it's kind of a quiz game, it was brain teasers, stuff like that. Can you go a little bit into Brain Surge?
Sure. So Brain Surge, as you know, Nickelodeon really built its legacy on game shows.
Yeah.
The early days of Nickelodeon, obviously the grandfather of all of them is Double Dare. You can't do that on TV. Figure It
Guts.
Out, Nick Arcade, Guts. My Family's Got Guts. So all of Nickelodeon's legacy was on that. And then over the years it got away from that and did a lot of animation, Nicktoons, and then they did a lot of live action. So Brain Surge, when Brain Surge came around, it was really kind of its re-entry into the game show space. At that point, I had been doing Pick Boy for a number of years. I think I was on their channel at that point for like 7 or 8 years. And so they asked me, they were like, hey, we're doing this game show. Would you want to audition? And I was like, okay, you know what I'm capable of, but you want me, I'll jump through the hoops. Fine. Like, I'll do it. And so after a series of auditions, I ended up getting it. And it was awesome. It was really well produced. It was Scott Stone was the producer and production company behind it, and he did Legends of the Hidden Temple way back in the day. So he knew how to deliver a Nickelodeon show, and we ended up just really assembling an amazing team of people who not only loved Nickelodeon, but people who loved game shows and people who know how to put together kids game shows. And it was just this great alignment of people, and we put together what I think is just an amazing show. And again, you want to talk about a show that is worthy of a reboot, whether it be for adults or another kids run. That was just a great show, a super fun show. We ended up doing 3 seasons. So I think it was 120 episodes total. People always ask me, "Hey, what happened? Are you coming back?" And I was just always, "Oh, we locked the keys in the studio and no one had an extra." So that's still there. We just don't know how to get in. So no, like I said, Brain Surge was that perfect transition from I was doing UPick Live. I had done UPick Live for so many years. UPick Live retired after 400 episodes. I did a bunch of Pick Boy stuff over the next few years. Just, the stuff that you said you're familiar with, all those little specials and one-offs. And Brain Surge was that next big step for me. That was something that really helped push me into a new direction. It allowed me to be Jeff versus Pick Boy. Not that there's a ton of difference between the two, because I'm not that smart. But I got to learn a lot about game shows, and that all of a sudden became something that became something I really wanted to continue doing, whether I was in front of the camera or behind the camera. And I met one of my best friends on Brain Surge, Tim Beggy, who I still work with today. And we develop stuff, we pitch stuff, and we are always coming up with new and crazy stuff.
Yeah, it's amazing to think about just America's love of game shows, especially like you think about just Wheel of Fortune, Jeopardy. Obviously, now Family Feud with Steve Harvey's been memed into oblivion, especially with SNL. But also, just I think a lot of people, especially kids today, or even sometimes people my own age, tend to forget or don't realize that Nickelodeon was a very game show heavy channel. Wasn't there even like a whole entire separate Nick channel based around the game shows at one point?
Yeah, when I started at Nickelodeon in 2002, at that point they weren't really doing much game show stuff anymore. But because they had such a library of game related stuff, they started Nickelodeon GAS, GAS, which stood for Games and Sports. So they had it, it's basically a separate sub channel. It might have been a digital channel. I'm not entirely sure. I can't remember, but that's where they were able to put all their old game show properties. But, again, I was super fortunate that over my run, because even before Brain Surge, they brought Guts back and did My Family's Got Guts, and I got hired as a producer on that. So I worked on that, and again, I kind of got to learn a little bit about game shows, and then I ended up getting the host of Brain Surge, got crash course on everything about, I got to work on that as a producer and the host. And then I came out of that. I did 101 Ways to Leave a Game Show for ABC. And that really came about because of Brain Surge, because the executives at ABC and the executives at Endemol, which was the production company that did the show, they all had kids who were watching Brain Surge. So I got that show because they walked through the room when their kids were watching. We're like, wait, who's this guy? And I still auditioned for it and had to jump through the hoops and make the rounds. But I really credit my exposure from Brain Surge to getting that show.
And I mean, like everybody, a lot of people today even have on their bucket list be on a game show, or at least for people my own age, they also want to be slimed by Nickelodeon. So, but a lot of people have it on their bucket list to be on a game show, and it's just always amazing to see how much people love them. But you also brought on another show that you were on, 101 Ways to Leave a Game Show. So for some people, including myself, who I will admit I wasn't too familiar with that show.
Sure.
Can you lay out what it was or what the concept was?
Yeah, it was a poorly designed stunt show disguised as a trivia show. I say that affectionately because I loved the show. It was amazing. So if you're familiar with the show Fear Factor, and Wipeout. Those are two major legacy shows. The same team of people, down from the executive producers, camera guys, audio guys, prop guys, were all the same people. They all worked together, and the exec producer came up with 101 Ways to Leave a Game Show, ended up casting me as the host. To your earlier point, it was originally a British format that they brought to the United States. And the idea behind 101 Ways to Leave a Game Show was contestants would be asked a trivia question. If everyone was forced to pick one of the answers, and the person who was wrong ended up getting eliminated from the show in grand fashion. We'd shoot them out of a cannon into the ocean, or we would strap them to the wing of an airplane and they'd have to take off. So really just fun, outrageous stuff where we were like Fear Factor, blowing up cars, crushing cars, sending things off cliffs. It was amazing. Every day showing up to work was like, what are we going to do today? They're like, well, we're going to blow this up. We're going to fly that plane. We're going to get a helicopter to drop that. And you're just like, oh my gosh, great. Sign me up. This is amazing. So really cool. I got to learn again, continued to learn a bunch of not only about game show, but now an even different level of game show. We're out of the studio. We're not, behind the safety of a podium and controlled lights. We're out on a lake attaching people to boats and, again, dropping stuff from helicopters and doing crazy stuff. So getting to see stunts and how they are rigged and how they work was awesome. And again, got to learn a ton from doing that.
Did you ever do any of the stunts yourself?
I wanted to. There was actually, let me rephrase that. No, there was, most of them I was like, that just looks crazy. There was one I wanted to do. They had a big, like, quarter-mile long zip line over a canyon, like a whole sand ravine type thing. And I was like, oh, can I do that? And the executive producer looked at me like, there's no way we can get insurance. The lawyers would kill us if we put you up on the zip line. So that was the only one I wanted to do. The rest of them, I was like, yeah, I'm good. Now, years later, when they rebooted Fear Factor for MTV, again, it was the same team. I got brought on as a producer, and I got to test. At that point, because I was a producer, I was expendable. They were like, hey, do you want to test out one of these stunts? I was like, yeah, sign me up. So, strapped into like a car that was getting pulled by a helicopter across a drag strip or whatever. So I got to do it, just not on 101 Ways.
Well, I mean, it is on my bucket list again, a game show, but I'm mostly going for like Wheel of Fortune, not Fear Factor, trying to make myself, I don't know, scare myself to death on a show. But I know some people are okay with that because obviously they get contestants. So
yeah.
But so another thing I know you've been up to, and I know you sent this to me, and personally, I didn't get to watch it really yet, but you've been doing some digital content recently. Can you kind of fill us in on that?
Sure. Me and my buddy Tim, who I mentioned earlier, who we met on Brain Surge and became fast friends. We've done a bunch of stuff in the past, and we got to a point a few years ago where we saw the industry changing. We had just finished up. We were exec producers and showrunners on Ryan's Mystery Playdate for Nick Jr. And so we had just started to learn a lot about the YouTube space and the digital space because we were working with Ryan, and that kid's the most popular kid in the world, one of the biggest YouTube stars ever. So working for 3 years with him, we started to really kind of pick up on stuff and learn stuff. And then we said, well, you know what? Animation is pretty bulletproof because we went through COVID and everything shut down except for animation. And we know we love kids TV. We know how to make it. And so we just said, hey, why don't we create a cartoon that we can, instead of going the traditional route of pitching like a Nickelodeon or a Disney or Netflix and having to get someone to say yes, why don't we just pitch investors and raise the money and make it ourselves and put it out on YouTube? There's zero barrier to entry. No one is telling you can't put this out. So that's what we did. We teamed up with an animation studio called Lunchbox Labs, and we said, "Here's our idea." And they built all the animation, the 3D animation for it. It's called Windy Weatherfoot. Windy is the 7-year-old daughter of Mother Nature. She's learning to come into her powers of nature. She's got a twin brother, Walker, and they have a bunch of friends and they go on these awesome adventures. And so we created a bunch of short, 2 to 3 minute YouTube episodes that we launched earlier this year on YouTube. And it's super proud of what we put out. We just launched a Roblox video game that goes with it. So all the stuff you see in the YouTube episodes, you can go on the Roblox video game and play and go on the same quests. And then we're in the process of continuing to grow the brand, which will eventually have some merchandise to go with it, and live events, AR, VR stuff we've been playing with, and in real life experience stuff where you can go to like some of these, Dave and Buster type places where we'll create things where you'll be able to go into the Windy universe. But that's what we've been up to the past few years, is really working hard on that. And again, the passion for kids TV is deep. It's we see the industry changing and things are changing. It used to just be, hey, if you're going to have a cartoon. When I was growing up, the only place cartoons aired was Saturday mornings. You guys grew up having Cartoon Network, Disney, Nickelodeon. Those were your three. You didn't have one of those, you weren't getting cartoons. Nowadays, it's everywhere. All your streamers have it. There's kids content's everywhere. So hey, why not us? Let's get in the game. Check it out. It's super fun, and we're proud of it.
Yeah, because like I remember when I was a kid, it was PBS Kids and then Nickelodeon, Disney, or Cartoon Network. And if you were a PBS kid, you grew up with all these different shows. If you were a Nickelodeon kid, you weren't really a Disney kid, or you were a Cartoon Network kid. You really chose one and went with it. And that was kind of your thing. I mean, obviously now that's changed because it's all streaming services. Obviously, channels still exist. But another thing you brought up was how you're kind of also not only doing a digital show, but you're also bringing a video game along with it. How does the video game market today interlock with the children's kind of entertainment sphere?
Like you said, I think something you just mentioned, hey, when you were growing up, like if you were a Nickelodeon kid, you weren't a Disney kid. Everyone kind of had their loyalties to what they are. Today, kids will get their content anywhere and everywhere, whether it's on a computer screen, a tablet, on their phone. That big rectangular thing that hangs on the wall that we grew up watching, they don't care if they watch that. They don't know what a TV is. It's in their pocket. So how kids consume content is completely different nowadays. So again, it's not, you don't even need to necessarily even be, as I said, associated with a network. We can self-broadcast by putting it out on YouTube, or maybe smaller content of, depending on your audience, it's your Instagrams or your TikTok, depending on who you're trying to market to. But your point is that you brought up is, it's not just about the cartoon anymore. It's about how do you make yourself multi-platformed, where if, okay, hey, they see this on YouTube, they like it, I want to go play it. They can play it, and in the game, there's things that push you back to YouTube. Like, oh, you want to see this? Oh, go watch this. And then in the YouTube videos, there's things that push to get you to go to Roblox. And then eventually we'll add a third tier of, like, there'll be merchandise in there. And hey, type in this, buy, like Roblox. You go buy a Roblox character in the store. You get a little piece of paper, and there's got a code. You go into Roblox, you type in that code, that gets you an exclusive hat for your character, and it's just this cyclical machine that ties all the things together. So entertainment has changed, and for better or worse, but you have to be able to think on different verticals now, and be able to pivot.
Yeah, because I'm from the era when there was the shows that were connected to video games, but like it wasn't interlocked with the show. Whereas
Right.
like obviously there was like I've come from the era of the year 2000s with the TV plug and play games, but then also there
Mhm.
was the like SpongeBob movie came out, the first one, and then there was
Right.
the SpongeBob PlayStation video game that came along with it. But it wasn't connected to the game fully. It was still like based off the game, different series. It wasn't
Right.
like another friend of the show, Howard Scott Warshaw, who was at Atari. He's the one who made the Indiana Jones Raiders of the Lost Ark game, where basically, from what I've been told by a lot of people, including him, that if you watch the movie, you'll be able to get through the entire game pretty easily.
Mhm.
But it's just today, though, it just seems that's far more interlocked than just like, okay, this is just a licensed property.
Yeah, yeah. It's. I mean, we built Windy Weatherfoot completely, as you said. It's all integrated. It's not an afterthought. It's not, oh, we got this really cool cartoon. Oh, you know what we should do? We should build a video game around it. And it's not backwards engineered. Everything is built at the same time. All the
Yeah.
assets that when we decided to do animation, it was, hey, do we do 2D animation, which is cheaper? Or do we do 3D animation, which is more expensive? Let's do the 3D animation because we can build those assets and we can use those assets in the video game as well. And then we have our video game designers working with our animators and our writers who are going, hey, here's the story for the animation. Then we kick that over to the game designers and developers and go, hey, we're going to have an episode where they're going to go into the rainforest and they're going to collect these bubbleberries. Oh, this is great. We'll build. And so it's not an afterthought. Not everything we do is built from, on paper. We, literally map it all out and go, okay, here's how all these things are going to tie and connect. It's the early days of digital content. I remember for Nickelodeon, like
Yeah.
I would, as a producer, I would go and do the like, oh, hey, why don't you go over to the iCarly set, bring a camera guy and shoot some behind the scenes stuff and we'll put it on nick.com. And it was like, like they already finished that episode. Oh, it was an episode they want to promote a special. Well, they shot that episode 3 months ago. Like that episode's gone. Like, so now we got to fake it, and we would do it, and no one's the wiser. But it was like, no, these can't be afterthoughts anymore. You got to build digital content and the gaming and the merchandising. It all has to be built together, so there's a plan.
Yeah. And you brought up another point there from one thing that a lot of people, especially my age, have noticed with the 2D versus 3D animation is that except for a couple shows that are still going and maybe just anime with Japan, stuff like SpongeBob and other ones, is that a lot of people kind of see now 2D animation as dying or dead, and now everybody's going more
Mm-hmm.
toward 3D animation. You brought up that 2D is cheaper, but 3D is more popular nowadays. Why do you think that shift happened?
Um, I think 3D. I think the biggest thing where you really saw 3D animation take hold was in the movies, and let's use
Yeah.
Toy Story as the perennial, whoa, you did that, and then everything started like, how do we do that? And then they figured out how to make what was a very expensive process a lot cheaper. Is it still expensive? Absolutely. But what we've learned, I think visually to the audience, the 3D feels more, oh wow, that's like right there, and it's more engaging than the traditional 2D animation. I
Yeah.
firmly believe story is king. If you have a good story and clever writing, it doesn't matter if it's 2D or 3D. You brought SpongeBob as an example. SpongeBob, The Simpsons, Family Guy. These are all great legacy shows that are the animation's 2D and a little more basic, and it's still great, but like it's the story, it's the jokes, that's what
Yeah.
keeps it going. The visual component of 3D animation is, oh man, check that out. That's really dynamic and it definitely pulls an audience in. The other part of it is, as we talked about with merchandise and play patterns, a 3D character translates to a toy much better. So you go, oh, look, there's, Lightning McQueen, I have now the Lightning McQueen Matchbox car that goes, and it's, just an instantaneous, transfer. So, and as I mentioned, now you can, if you are building video game, if you start the process right, your 3D animated assets can be used for, other things like your video games and your modeling for toys. The other big part is when we start making more Windy Weatherfoot episodes, we've already built all the characters. They're already there. All the backgrounds are there. We just go, all right, let's new story, build this. Whereas every episode of SpongeBob, everything that's in 2D has to be drawn from scratch every single time. Whereas we already have these things. Now it's just going, all right, we need them to say these lines, and we need them to move in this way, and they need to interact this way. But those assets are already there, and we can keep reusing them, which ultimately does bring our cost down.
Yeah, and it's interesting how you brought up how also it's not just the animation, but it's also the storytelling. And I've always said, I've had this thing where it's just like different shows will attract you for different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And I've used the example of both two adult animation shows, which also you brought up being The Simpsons and Family Guy, and two children's Nickelodeon shows being Rugrats and SpongeBob. Is that both will attract you for different reasons. Like Family Guy and SpongeBob are pretty much just joke machines, where it's just the joke is pretty much written, and then the episodes kind of revolve around those jokes. And then for The Simpsons and Rugrats, it's much more developed writing than just a joke machine. It attracts you for different reasons. And how much of the story is, how do you kind of like do yours? Do you just come up with the story first, or do you come up with just one little thing and people just have to go around it with that episode?
Well, with animation, you have to, well, with anything, you're always creating the script first. But
Yeah.
a germ of an idea for us can come. Usually it's us sitting around a table acting like idiots, and one of us will say something, we'll start laughing, oh, that's funny. And then we go, hey, wait, what if we took that and kind of opened it up and had this and this and this happen? And now, okay, now we have a germ of an idea. Now we have a scene. And that's, how that sort of thing for us usually happens. And then there's times, and again, like depending on what it is, that's for us. Like with Windy, we're in charge of all of it. We don't have to answer to anybody. If it's funny to us and we think it's a good idea, we're making it. But when you are working for a network, whether it be Nickelodeon or Disney, they might come and say, hey, we want, when we were doing Ryan's Mystery Playdate, they would say, hey, we want a pirate episode, or we want a dinosaur episode. So that helped dictate, okay, we need to make a special that deals with these sorts of things. But with anything, whether you're doing it for yourself or whether you're doing it for a network, you always have, especially with your younger shows, you have what's called, a curriculum, or, there is a mission to every single thing. For Windy Weatherfoot, it's be good natured, be good to nature, and be home for supper. Those are the three pillars that we build every episode on. So no matter what it is, we want to make sure we hit those three things. Blue's Clues, the curriculum there is problem solving. And it's disguised, for Dora the Explorer. The curriculum there is Spanish speaking and learning how to read a map, in its most basic form. Those are, the curriculum elements that go into every show. On the youth side, your older shows, SpongeBob and stuff like that, might not necessarily have a curriculum, but there's still a mission of staying true to the character traits. This is who SpongeBob is. This is his strength. This is his flaw. This is who Mr. Krabs is. This is his strength. This is his flaw. This is Patrick. And you go through, and as long as you service those things and stay true to them, I think that's what's most important.
Yeah. So we're coming up on the end of the interview here.
Okay.
So
is this where we do the big finishing dance number?
If you want to dance, be my guest. You might not see it on the radio,
no.
But you want to sing it
if they're not gonna see it, then tell them it was wonderful.
Okay. Tell me it was Dancing with the Stars worthy. So we have a few minutes left here,
Sure.
and I usually like to end with this question being obviously we've covered a lot of stuff here, but we haven't been able to cover everything. I know probably there's some stuff you want to say too that you haven't gotten the chance to, but if you have anything that you really want to get off your chest and you've done other interviews, haven't been able to say it or anything, now is your time.
All right. Well, like I said, I think we kind of finished talking with the project that I'm currently doing, Windy Weatherfoot. It's something that I would love for people to check out. It is, obviously the audience that's listening might not necessarily, oh yeah, this is my content, but maybe you have kids or maybe you have nieces, nephews that that would enjoy it. And if you've enjoyed the stuff I've done as you were growing up, whether it was Brain Surge, Pick Boy, Figure It Out, 101 Ways, you'll definitely see my influence and my buddy Tim's influence, because that's what we've our approach on it has always been, if it's funny to us and it makes us laugh and we think it's a good idea, we're going to put it in the show. So it is an extension of what I've done for years. It's now just animated.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for coming on. These are usually some of my favorite interviews to do because not only do I get to relive my own childhood, I get to learn more about kind of stuff that you do within the, whether it be animation or just entertainment realm. So thank you again. But this has been Justin Kenny with WBCR 88.3 The Saints here with Jeff Sutphen. So Jeff, thank you for being with us.
Justin, thanks so much for having me on. True fans up front.
Well, everybody out there in Radio Land, have a good one.